Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
This week's and next week's Black Spy podcast are special. Basically, I've got on one of the top actors today in the British acting profession. His name is Ashley Walters. He's well known for things like Top Boy and his Sky superb drama, which was the one he actually wrote it, called Bulletproof. And also he's a musician. So what I wanted to do was to get a lot of time with Ashley on the show. I've been trying forever and a day, and I managed to do it. Now, the reason why I'm speaking ahead of my intro is because, unfortunately, during the talk, you will hear now and then, because as you know, I work over the internet, his line was dropping out. But again, not very much. That is inconsequential, to be fair. But I just wanted to explain to listeners what the score is. So do listen to both this week's and next week, and you'll get the full feel for it. Maybe listen to this week's and then listen to next week's as well as this week's and next week's. You're going to get a fantastic show. So thank you very much for listening once again, listeners, and stay tuned. My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show which shines a light on the hitherto hidden world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, and also looks at the geopolitical world in which we all inhabit, and to see how that secret world plays into our geopolitical world. Now, sometimes it's a lot, and other times it's quite a bit less. And what I do then with the guests, who generally have an interest in the secret world in some way, shape, or means, we sort of discuss and see where the synergies are, or even just discuss the person's background. Now, with this individual, I've been waiting to try and get him on the show forever and a day. He's an A-lister, as we call actors today. His successes are incredible. He's not only that, he's also a singer in grime and rap. And also, his background is an interesting one of how he got into the game and shows determination and what you could say is true grit. So I'd like to have the honor to welcome to the show for today. It's the one and only Ashley Walters, also known as Asha D. Ashley, how are you?
I'm good, Carlton. I'm good. I'm really good. You're too kind. That was a really nice intro. Thank you.
It couldn't be, in fact, it could be better, but it couldn't be worse. That's what I could say there.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, but great. No, thank you very much for being on the show. Actually, I mean, without messing around and out jumping anywhere, can you just sort of give us a little bit of your start in life? You know, what was it like for you growing up? And did you always look into the world of acting and stuff like that?
I think I always looked into the world of entertainment from a very early age. So I grew up as an only child. So
okay.
My dad had 5 kids. Me being the eldest, or I thought I was the eldest until coming to the end of his life. But I grew up as the eldest kid of 5, but I had like 4 younger half brothers who I didn't grow up with. I was my mum's only child. So I grew up as an only child, which made me, if I'm honest, quite independent, but also quite lonely, quite shy, quite an introvert. But from an early age, I found release in performing. So that could be anything, like from dancing in front of my family, you know, on family occasions and family gatherings, or, you know, going to stage school, or writing music, writing lyrics from a young age, or I found escapism in listening to music and watching film. So that's things I was doing from like maybe 3 years old, onwards. Like one of my earliest memories was being about 6 years old. And to the young people that are listening to this podcast, they probably won't have heard of the Yellow Pages, but that's what we had to use back in the day when there was no Google. And so basically, my mum caught me using the house phone. I was calling record labels. I'd worked out that music artists were signed to record labels and had record deals, and that's how their music was put on TV.
Actually, how old were you at this time? How old?
I was about 6 years old. I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I kind of opened the Yellow Pages, pinpointed all the record labels in the Yellow Pages, and I was ringing around the record labels. And I remember my mum coming in the room like, "What are you doing?" I was using the house phone, and she was, and from that age, I think we all kind of in the family, everyone kind of realized that I wanted to perform, but it didn't. The reason why I'm talking about this and going into such depth is because it wasn't specifically acting at that point. It was like anything I could do to entertain anyone. You know, I could have been a comedian, actor, singer, you know, whatever it was at that point. I just wanted to entertain other people. I think the acting thing came once I ended up in drama school at quite a young age because my mum was my cousin's chaperone. He was like 3 or 4 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And my mum on weekends would be taking him to all these open auditions and castings because his mum was working. And I would always be dragged along. And it just so happened one day we went to an audition for a big play in the West End. I think it was at the Prince Edward Theatre for a play called Children of Eden. It's like the Cain and Abel story. And so I was kind of thrown in the mix. There was a guy there that was just said to my mum, you know, you might as well put him in as well. He's here. There was hundreds of kids there. And I got it, you know, out of these like a few hundred children, I got the part. And my career pretty much started from that point.
But why did you get the part? What did you have that the others who presumably had been acting before had? Why did you get it? Were you told?
No, I wasn't told. And if, you know, putting my sort of assessment head on, I'd say I'd spent like, you know, all of my time before just immersed in film. It's one of those things. It's like when you immerse yourself in something just because you love it, you don't realize how much knowledge you're taking on board. Correct. So at that age, I already understood the format of film, the format of narrative, because I'd watched it so much. I used to watch films, like I used to hide the movies that my mum would let me rent from the video shop so I could continuously watch them. So I'd watch like the same film 3 times a day, like The Goonies and Flight of the Navigator and stuff like that. Like I understood narrative, I understood story.
So you understood the dialogue, you heard the dialogue, and I guess you could actually reverberate the dialogue. When somebody was saying it, you were probably saying it with them, were you? Was it at that depth?
Yeah, 100%. That was like, I was living it. I was like, I was so entwined with like the stuff that I was watching and like all the parts that resonated with me and that I could relate to and whatever. It didn't really matter what the story was. I'd find, you know, parts of it that meant a lot to me within it. And I guess that's kind of what I took with me when I, you know, and music as well. I'd grown up listening to so much music. My mum was a huge Motown fan, soul fan, neo soul fan. So all of that music, the vinyls in the house and the music that I'd hear and I'd play myself or whatever, you know, this was a musical that I was going up for. So you had to sing. I had to sing Happy Birthday and do act one scene. And I don't even really think my mum knew how good of a singer I was at that point until I just opened my mouth and I sang. And I guess I didn't realize that I understood tonality and and sonically I sounded all right. So yeah, it just, for me, it kicked off at that point, and I developed a huge love for performing, especially in an art form that encompassed music and acting together.
Now, did your cousin, who your mum was taking around chaperoning, did his actions reflect on you as well? Did you actually see how he was doing and think, I'd like to do that?
Yeah. There was many times that as a family, we'd go and see him in a show, in a play. We'd be really far at the back. They'd have those 20 pence binoculars that you could take out of the seat to watch the performance. This is old school, man. I'm oldish. So,
you're youngster to me, my friend. But yeah, okay.
I get you. But yeah, I had to basically, all of that stuff fed into me wanting to be a part of it, or me wanting to do something. But I never was jealous. I was always I was spurred on. Yes. It just made me more determined to achieve.
Now, there's something else that I was going to ask, because what came to my mind when you said it, that you were doing this as an extremely young kid, was that, and I guess I could sort of see some synergy between me and you. I used to kind of at 8 years, maybe 7, 8 years of age, I used to sort of tune into the radio and listen to these stations. Sometimes by the time I guess I was 9, I knew some of the stations you shouldn't be listening to as the way we saw the world. We're talking now the 1960s. Yeah. And I'd tune into Radio Moscow. They had an English service. I'd tune into it, because I had this old radio, which I got from my old man. And he was able to get some valves, because some valves were missing and stuff. And I was able to put the valves in them and get it going. You won't know these valve radios before transistorization. So it used to whine. I used to listen to them, and they'd be talking about communism and this, that, and the other, and the New World Order. So I'd listen to that, and I'd listen to Helvesham. I'd listen to the absolute opposite, the Voice of America, which is all about capital, and I'd listen to the BBC World Service. I'd listen to all these stations, and I just love the appeal of geopolitics to me. So I understand exactly what you're saying. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I was listening to that at, 7, 8, 9 years of age, before I knew any better, before I knew that people of my hue, of my color, in the United Kingdom, didn't get into that area. You just couldn't get in. So yeah. I was doing that before I was held back. And it seems to me that you were doing it before you were held back. Because I can remember when, and I think you might, although you weren't living at that time, I think you might understand it. There used to be a program called Ironside on television, right? Have you heard of it? It's Raymond Burr. It was a story where there was this guy who had been the chief of detectives in Los Angeles or wherever it was, and now he's a district attorney, and he'd been shot when he was the chief of detectives, so he's in a wheelchair. And it was a very popular American program on every Saturday. But the draw for the family was, all 7 of us and mum and dad, we'd sit around and watch this at like it was 8 o'clock, 9, we could stay up and watch it. And we'd sit around and watch this because there was a black guy in it. And the black guy's role was basically pushing this guy, who's now a paraplegic, around in his chair. But because we hadn't really seen any others, Mission Impossible came a bit later, because we hadn't seen any others, it was so immense. So we'd sit around and watch this black guy. So acting as a black fella, you would have thought, and a black woman, in Britain in particular, other than love thy neighbour sort of stuff, you'd have thought, you can't get in. So tell me, did you feel that ever? Did you ever feel, I can't get in?
Yeah. I guess, but well, do you know what? That might be a bit of a lie, because I never had that. Although I did understand that there were only a few people that looked like me in the place I was trying to get into, I never saw that as a challenge for some reason. Interesting. Yeah, so I felt that I completely understood Black people were rarely on TV. And when I got that feeling of being with my mum and she'd call me out the bedroom, Ashley, you know, and I'd run into the room and there's a black guy on TV. That's how amazing it was. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, there's one of us on there. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, you know, that I completely understood how rare it was. But in my mind, the challenge and the barrier wasn't there. I only really understood that once I was in, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
So, you know, once I got to a position that people were talking about me, I was in films, I was on TV or whatever, then I started to realize the difference between me and my white counterparts was that, you know, there was only certain things I'd be allowed to do. There was only certain roles I would be allowed to play because of the color of my skin. And that was quite hard to deal with because, you know, when you've had a really easy run of it, or you feel like it's been a really kind of clear run of, you know, getting jobs and being involved or whatever, the minute I just wanted to expand on my skill, the minute I wanted to, you know, embody or play different parts, I was shut down. You know, it's like, no, you can't play a policeman. No, you can't be a lawyer. You know, you can't be a doctor. Like, you can't be, you know, every role I played, I had to be the gangster. I had to be the drug dealer. You know, I was in the Bill 3 years in a row. And the Bill, the TV show, how it worked is they would allow you could come back every year and play a different part. All right, okay. As a guest. So if you were a main part and you were playing one of the officers and you were in the main series, then no. But as you know, people would come in for like one episode and you play the person that's getting caught, or, you know, just a guest lead. And they'd allow you to come back once a year. There had to be a year in between the time you'd done it the last before you came back, and you could play someone else. And for 3 years in a row, I played, you know, a gang member, drug dealer. And the last time I think I played a gangster or someone that had been arrested, a young black boy that had been arrested for some sort of criminal act. I can't remember, but it turned out that my dad was an MP. Okay. And, you know, so that's how I got off of it. And that was as good as it got. Yeah. You know what I mean? In that sense, like, you know, so after a while it became boring, you know, and you did want to challenge the normal. You wanted to change, you know. I started to become a bit righteous. And I remember having a huge conversation with my my agent, just saying, look, I just said to her, look, I'm done with this now. Like, I'm done with playing the same guy. I've paid my dues. I want to play other roles. And her answer to me was, look, you have to, first of all, you have to turn down the parts that you're continually being offered. Right. And that might mean that you don't work for a while and you don't make money, and just hold out for the roles that you do want to play. And I said, okay, fine. That's tough. Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was hard because by that point, I had my first son. You know, my daughter was on the way. I had my first son when I was 17. So, you know, it was hard. It was hard for me. I was living by myself. I was living with my partner at the time, and, you know, our son, and we literally had nothing, nothing. Like, when I'm talking about, like, no fridge, no cooker. So you live in Hampton, we were living in, yeah. It was hard work, and, you know, everything was kind of on my shoulders and relying on me. But at the same time, I understood that the way you want to be perceived by people is the way that you should carry yourself, if you get what I'm saying.
You see, actually, this is very important, because playing these roles basically increases the stereotype. So it makes people think that this is all we do. These people of this hue are always in trouble. They always do this. They're only always gangsters. Because otherwise, why would the TV be portraying that? You know, why would the TV be showing that? If they're only ever gangsters on TV, surely that must be what they're like in real life. You know, I'll tell you a funny story with that, and which is an absolutely true story. Basically, we were down in Dorset, down that area, And I was at the time, I joined the British Police Service, and I came into Special Branch with 2 years. And as you know or don't know, Special Branch basically does political policing. It's all basically work that has to do with national security, from the protection side all the way through to terror to espionage. So on this case, I was on the protection side, and we were protecting a minister we had down there, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, IRA days. We were protecting him. And basically, we were driving from one place to another, me and the guys. So there was me, the driver, and in the back, the detective sergeant. I was a detective constable, and the driver. So we to a special branch, and the driver we get from a different area who drives. So he was a great guy, don't get me wrong. So we're all part of this team. We're driving back, and our car, when you drove in those days, it had in the back, it had a system where it showed that it said police if you press the button and it lit up. So it could say police, it could say police stay back, or something like that. But because it was the old dot matrix system, if the sun shone on it in a particular way, it showed up anyway, even though it wasn't switched on. Now, what was happening is this woman was driving, I think it was a Range Rover or a Land Rover. This is old days, so this is like 80s, early, late 80s it would be. And mid 80s actually, and she's driving behind us, and she's in a hurry. We're driving normal pace, the driver's driving normal pace, and she went to overtake single road, and then she sort of dropped back, and kept going, and then she came forward and drove past us again. Very poor overtake, it was bad. So the driver, the reason why I explained it to you, special branch officers had to do a lot of exams and came in, but our drivers we brought in from traffic patrol and from various other areas who drove for us all the time on protection. But because he's an ex-traffic guy, he still had that traffic in his mind. So he said, I've got to pull this woman over. So we had plenty of time. So he said, okay, go for it, So he pulls her over, drives her in front, puts the light on, and it's a blue rinse lady, an old 60. I'm like 65, so I'm saying old 60. So he's not, Ben was old lady from Women's Institute. She said, oh, I'm on my way to the Women's Institute. She said, and this is what she said to him. And I had to get there. I'm the chairwoman of it. And we got somebody coming up, an MP, whomever it was, coming up. So I'm late and I wanted to get in time. He said, I thought it was a police vehicle. I thought I saw the sign say police. But then when I drove to come closer to you, I saw you had a black fellow in the front, she said. And I thought, right, it can't be a police vehicle because you've got a black fellow in the front. Because if it was a black fella, he'd be in the back because he'd be arrested. So, so the horse, the guy, we called him the horse because he's called the Chevalier. So he came back laughing because we haven't heard any of this. He was laughing and holding his stomach. He came back and he told us the story, what she said. He said, it's unbelievable. She said, I thought it couldn't be police then. I thought I must have misread it because there was a black fellow in the front. And there could only be a black fellow in the back if it was a police vehicle because they'd be arrested. So she had no concept at all of a black guy ever being anything like the police. The only way she could see me was as a prisoner. And that's what these films and that have done. They've created this image. They've created it.
Yeah.
That's true, mate. Can you believe it? That's absolutely true.
Yeah. No, and that's I don't doubt it. And I'm sure you've got some more crazy. I know you've got more crazy stories. Do you know what I mean? Like, just like that. And the same for me. It's so weird because obviously I don't see myself as that old. I'm coming up to my 40th birthday this year, in a couple of months. And in the space of 10, maybe 15 at a push years, our industry, the industry that I'm in, has changed so much. Yes. It's gone from us being so underrepresented or in media and on TV to today, everyone's striving to be diverse, which means, and look, there's still a lot more to be done because a lot of people are ticking boxes and, it's more for their benefit than to actually change the futures of up and coming, ethnic minority stars. But there's a change happening nevertheless. And I've witnessed, I had a show called Bulletproof that was on Sky.
Superb show, by recently, the way. Which was very good show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I mean, it was a really popular show. We had a lot of support across races, across age groups. It did really well for Sky. But to get that show made took 8 years. When we first took that show to anyone, when it was conceived, we were told in no uncertain terms that 2 black men as leads, as police officers, will not work. It will not fly. A lot of the big wigs that we went and sat down with turned us away. Said, we love your work or whatever, but how do we sell a show with you two on the poster? Like, how does that work? Like, no one's going to buy it. No one's going to want it. And it took us 8 years of fighting constantly, consistently, before someone, and a woman of color, actually, from Sky, and Mensa, who's now at Netflix, a good friend of mine, and also behind Top Boy with us as well.
Which is a great part, by the way, as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, she took the chance. She took the chance, and that's what I guess that's what it takes. Is like, this is what I'm saying about the change coming from within, and people working their way into these inner circles and getting themselves into a position of power where they can commission shows like, Bulletproof, like Top Boy or whatever, and give them the run that they deserve. Let the people decide. If you can't get through the door, then the masses never get to know whether they would have liked it or not.
Exactly.
And tradition sometimes overshadows progression in this game.
Yeah.
So
in all games, actually. In all games.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a DJ in early on in life. That's what I wanted to do. And there's a guy by the name of Stuart Henley, great voice, Scottish guy, did Radio Caroline, good DJ, excellent DJ, in fact, superb guy. And he had a tape from me because my missus sent him a tape. I'm a young fella, and he sent him a tape, and he said, "This is great. This fella should play. He should play on the radio." And so I thought, he said, go to the BBC Radio 1. So I sent to Radio 1, and there was a colour bar. You couldn't get in. They just wouldn't accept you. It just wasn't, this is like 70, yeah? So 70, about 75, 76. They just wouldn't take you. So as late as 76, you couldn't get on BBC Radio 1. You just couldn't. And I saw that before because I was into dance at one stage. You couldn't get in to the dance academies. So there's all that sort of stuff that has gone on in life. Now, I'm a guy, I don't know what you, and I want to ask you this actually. I'm a guy who, when I was brought up in my area where I was, we were the only black family there in the area, in the sort of area, the middle town we were. And my old man, because he was a great cricketer, was very, very well respected by everybody. And the people that I used to call my grandparents, and all our family did, because our real grandparents were in the Caribbean, people used to call our grandparents, were white Lancastrians on both sides, grandma and granddad, and the other grandma who was by herself because her husband had died in the war. And, they treated us as if we were their grandchildren, right? There was a total connection. And when I was at school, like there's 1,500 people in the school, whatever it was, 1,003, I was the only black guy there. My sisters were above me. But I was the only black guy to my sisters. So you had all that. So I know what it's like to be in an area where you got to defend, which is why I became a Kung Fu man, which is why you got to be able to defend yourself. So I understand that. And the old man taught us all to box because before he was a cricketer, he was a boxer as well. So I saw that, but I saw both sides of that. I saw the side whereby you have white people who put their hands in the fire for you because, you're their family. You're no different than their family. I just wanted to ask you whether you had that or whether you were more in an area that was all black people generally. And I don't think there's any area that's all black people, but, a number of black people, whereby you could basically, you didn't have that understanding. Because I could see both sides of that coin. I never really went in thinking there was a negative. The negative hit me a lot of times. Did you see what I mean? That's the difference. It hit me a lot of times. Rather than me expecting it.
No, I had the same I had the same kind of entry as you, in that sense that in my area where I grew up is Southeast London in Peckham. Peckham was called Little Lagos because I mean, you know, there was a lot of Nigerians there,
right?
And it's where a lot of Black people and Caribbeans, Jamaicans, settled when they came to London. So, you know, that was kind of, in a sense, I was surrounded by my people,
right,
in that sense, and my culture. But at the same time, there was a lot of white working class families scattered amongst us as well. And as far as I could see, everyone lived amongst each other and worked together. And it was, you know, in unison. It was hard. We were all in the same boat as far as we were concerned. It wasn't about color against color. It was about us against the government, if anything. Do you know what I mean? And so it was only when I got into the corporate world that I started to understand that, oh, you know, I'm slightly disadvantaged here because of the color of my skin. And that was a huge shock. But like I said to you, you know, all these huge shocks have come and whatever, none of them have deterred me.
No, they build you up, don't they?
They build me up.
Let me say this. Let me say this. I'm saying they build you up. It's not necessarily the case that they build you up. Basically, I see you as what Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois called the talented 10. So 10% of the people you're never going to be able to hold down, no matter what you do to them, right? But the other 90%, and that's with all people, no matter where they come from, what color they are, whatever, the other 90% need the nurturing, need the assistance. So you're, to my mind, one of the talented 10 who, no matter what you did to this guy, to you, you would come at Smile and Roses. Now, it might be that you were the world's best pianist or the world's best mathematician or the world's best bank robber. Didn't matter. You come to the top in whatever you did. And this is the thing. So my point has always been to help the others. I mean, the people, as I say, I call my grandparents, they couldn't speak standard English. They were Lancastrians. They spoke Lancashire dialect. So they'd speak me, what's that doing, lads? Is that going back to the Zen and all that, talk, that sort of talk like that, you see, because they didn't know how to speak BBC English. They didn't know it, right? So you were amongst these people talking like this, and they were all your family, and their children were your children, and all that sort of stuff. And it was great. But then, obviously, step a little way outside and go to Manchester somewhere, and you'll see signs: no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. You know, and blacks and Irish were optional. But it was always Irish and dogs were optional, but it was always no blacks. So because we'd travel, 20 odd miles to see some black people in Manchester, 30 miles, whatever it was. And so that's the difference. So it was quite interesting that. So you begin to, but then the other side of the coin is you learn the support you've got. I remember once I was with a young lady on a settee at a party like you do when you're 16, 17 or whatever it is. And next minute, some fella kicked me in the head and said, "What are you doing with one of our birds?" The language of the 1970s, So I stand up, and then there's about 10 of them. They're all standing there. And I thought I could handle myself, but I thought I can handle 4, 5, but 10, I'm struggling, So I stand there ready to play. And next minute, all my guys, all white, of course, all come behind me. If you fight with him, mate, you fight with us. Yeah. And they didn't need to do that. But see what I mean? So I could see both sides of this coin. I had the look of being, not being pushed in one direction by saying, "Oh, all people who are white are bad," or whatever, all people black are good. You know what I mean? And that was, I saw that as a great positive later on. As you said to me just now, I wanted to touch on something you said when you were speaking, and you were talking about showing to your family your capability, and then going on to stage school. How did that happen? How did you? Because I know from a very early age you were acting. So how did you get to stage school?
Well, like I said, my cousin was already there, was already going, and it was just a case of it just made sense. It wasn't a decision that I forced on my mom or asked for or whatever. It was just, she was taking my cousin every Saturday for, 5 hours. He would be there or whatever. We'd drop him, go and eat lunch in town, come back, you know, do a bit of shopping, come back and pick him up or whatever. And it just made sense that I went as well, you know, but what was the struggle was the fees. It cost a lot of money.
Right.
And you know, I don't know whether it was like 200 quid, 300 quid a month or something like that, but it was a
So
lot
that
of
was just
money
one day then, Ash, is that right? One day, or was it more days?
Yeah, it was one day a week. 1 day a week. Yeah, it was like every Saturday. So yeah, eventually I was enrolled. My mum enrolled me, and she struggled to make those payments. £200 is still a lot of money for any
absolutely,
working class family. And you know, it was back then. And the value of what £200 was then compared to today, you know what I mean, it's a different level. So yeah, so she managed to do it, and yeah, I was involved. I got in, and it just helped to hone my craft. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being there, and you know, I took every advantage I could from being there. But like I said, throughout that experience, I was colorblind. You know, I didn't understand that other people were getting more from me or whatever. If anything, the feeling or the vibe that I got from family, elders and stuff was the thing that started to make me really understand the difference between myself and others when it comes to, you know, my mum saying, as a black man, you have to work 10 times harder than
I think I've already heard that speech. Yeah.
You know, I'm hearing that speech every week. You know, you can't make mistakes like other people do because you're black, and you know, that stuff probably was, you know, and I love my mum. I you know, she's been such a pivotal part of my whole career and my life, and she still is now when it comes to the stuff I do. But you know, hearing those things, in hindsight, I realized that was a lot of her fear.
Yes.
And you know, what she saw happen to my dad, what she saw happen to the other men in her family, you know, and how it was for her as a woman.
She learned from the Caribbean. You know, this is what people forget. She learned from the Caribbean. You know, what you learned from, I mean, my father left the Caribbean because he knew, because of his color, my mother's light skinned, so because of her color she had advantage, but because of his color he had disadvantage. The only advantage he had was his dad ran the lighters which emptied the ships. So he had said to a ship's captain, his dad, take my lad on board the ship. This is during the war. And so he was in the Battle of the Atlantic and so on and so forth. But he'd rather be that than stay on the island, because on the island, you weren't going anywhere. And this is because there was that color coding, as you know. The lighter you are, the better you are, and if you're white, you're at the top. So, and all of your capacity was related to that. You know, you could only do certain jobs. People forget that. They come to Britain. For many, coming to Britain was a greater advantage, not lesser advantage, a greater advantage. Yeah. So, albeit that it was a British colony. These are British colonies, you know, and you had a British passport when you left and all the rest of it, which people don't understand. They think that you were these foreigners. Well, we're not foreigners. For 400 years, we had a British passport that said we were British and we provided for the empire. But people forget all of that because it's, you know, they want to. But the point is, for me, is for many from these places, Jamaica being one, you know, you were limited to what you were going to be able to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, it was slightly different because my mum was born in London.
Right. So she's advantage.
So my gran came from Guyana. My gran's Guyanese.
Oh, from Guyana.
She came from. Yeah. So she came from Guyana when she was 17 years old, and came by herself, no family. So anyone who left Guyana, everyone else who left Guyana and her family went to America.
Yes.
So most of my family are like New York and around that area. But she came here and she met my granddad, who was Jamaican. Yes. And, you know, obviously family started there. But my mom and all my uncles and my aunt were born here. So they experienced my life, the racism, even though even though, you know, they were born here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we still see that today. Do you know what I mean? If you're black,
Absolutely.
you're black at the end of
Absolutely.
you know, that's how it goes. But yeah, so it was slightly different for her. So I think a lot of the fear that she had wasn't, I think, like when you're coming from a different country and coming here, I think seeing the opportunities look greater.
Correct.
To you.
Correct. Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
If you find with a lot of, like, you know, black people that are immigrated or migrating, or, you know, Eastern Europeans, or like their understanding, their lust for building something here is a lot greater than some of the people that are born here. I always find. So yeah, and you know, I was growing up in an environment where she just faced so much racism as a kid in school, that her fear for me was quite immense. You know, it was a lot. And I guess sometimes, you know, without her wanting to or doing it on purpose, a lot of those fears were pushed on me. But my whole attitude was, you know, as I think a lot of kids' attitudes are with their parents, it was like that for you, but it ain't gonna be like that for me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the stuff that you tell me is impossible to do, I'm gonna make it happen. Yeah. I'm gonna make it happen, you know. So a lot of the stuff that I achieved, she didn't genuinely believe I would achieve in the beginning. Yeah. Like, you know, the success I had in music initially and at the start of my career was something that she tried to suppress sometimes, you know, because of what was surrounded by, you know, some of the violence, some of the criminality, the drugs, and the stuff that was involved with DJing and raving and stuff like that.
I do want to come on to that. I do. Was that, as you saw it, universal within that system, or was it within pockets of that system? It's getting some great stuff from Ashley, so I didn't want to stop. So do listen to next week, and you'll get the full feel for it. You're going to get a fantastic show. So thank you very much for listening once again, listeners, and stay tuned.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4, or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.